Welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we're going to be talking about the top 10 loadouts after the Season 5 update. Even though there weren't a ton of balancing changes, obviously they introduced a couple new weapons and they've made changes throughout the season. They ended up nerfing the Milano to actually match the Season 4 patch notes. So there were a lot of different tweaks and we've kind of found out what works in different scenarios. So that's what we're going to cover today. We'll kind of breeze through the different loadouts and we'll talk a little bit about Warzone Ranked to give you a better idea on where things are placing if I left something off the list. Enjoy the video, learn something new. Please do me a favor, hit the like button. Goal in today's video is 10,000 likes. So hopefully you guys can destroy that number. If you're brand new, want to find your way back for more Call of Duty content, double check, make sure you are subscribed with notifications on. Also, just a heads up, my Gfuel code is currently 30% off all the way until the 16th of this month. So if you're looking to stock up or try something new, you can just click the link near the top of the description or just code JGOD at checkout. So pretty straightforward. We're going to go through some of these. We do have the AMAX in here in my experimental class. This is one that I usually tend to swap out. I think the AMAX is kind of more of an honorable mention because there are some great options. It's still a good option. It's just kind of there's other options in the game currently that I think just end up outperforming it. Either way, the class setup for the AMAX is pretty much the same. Monolithic, Zodiac, Commando, 45 round mag, 3x optic. And then we have the Tech 9. I think it's a good weapon, but there's only really one loadout that I think is worth using, and that is with the repeater. Unfortunately, this thing doesn't have a suppressor. It does keep you on the mini-map less than a regular, gun, but it's just not all there. I think the TTK is very good. Fast fire rate, so super forgiving for this fully auto version of it. And then you just build it like the rest of the SMG, so you get good mobility. Recoil's not insane. It's mostly just kind of up and to the right. Task Force, 5 milliwatt Raider, and then 48 round mag. You would use the actual regular mag. I went and tested it. That's why I had the fast mags there. And overall, the results basically say you should just use the regular 48 round mag if you want to go ahead and stay competitive in terms of ADS, and because it's not impacting the reload that much like we've seen on some of these other weapons. With the perks, this is where it gets a little bit weird. I think you still want to run EOD or double time currently, but that may change as the season goes on. I think more people are starting to use this Combat Scout perk, so it might make sense to use Cold-Blooded. Even though Cold-Blooded has been kind of a waste for a while, I think now it's getting to that point. I have to do some testing with the High Alert to see if it stops dead silence while you're cold-blooded, and see maybe that's a counter, so that if you get dead silence, there's a little bit more testing to do with that one. It's just a little bit more complicated to get into a match, so you can actually test that. When it comes to tempered, I see a lot of people going with that route, and there are some great options if you want to go ahead and just get a perk loadout instead of an overkill one. But that's going to really come down to preference, and I'll give some suggestions when I go through my restock and my ghosts that'll kind of make a little bit more sense for you depending on how you want to build it. But generally, you're going to go overkill for most of the loadouts if you're looking to get a primary and secondary weapon that are both like optimum. And then we have the Combat Scout. This is pretty solid here. We're going to talk about instances that you should probably use Amped and instances that you should probably use the Combat Scout because there are differences, and we'll go ahead and walk through that. But that's kind of how I would set it up currently. Lethals are regular Semtex, and then obviously the crutch one is a heartbeat sensor. Obviously using Restock or something like that, stuns are a little bit better of a way to go. And that's kind of how that loadout works. Then we have the Growl Restock Ghost loadout. And the only thing that changes is the lethal as well as Restock to Ghost. So what we'll do is talk about a couple different things. The reason why I use this one is because you get fully loaded. This is a perfect, loadout 5. When you come in, you're able to grab it. You get fully loaded. And this thing has good iron sights, mobility. TTK isn't special, but it's good enough to compete because the recoil is so low. It's really easy to use. So it's a great option, right? And then we get the Psychov. Obviously, they did buff the Amp. So the Amp is really good too, but obviously that's a Cold War one. So you're not going to be able to get fully loaded if you want to go that route. But Amp is definitely usable now because one of the biggest drawbacks before was you wouldn't be able to down 2 players with 1 mag unless you just we're hitting headshots. So now it's a little bit more forgiving because they extended those mags. So we got monolithic suppressor for this, auto barrel, tac laser, 80 round drum, and then the Priz rack, which is going to help with the aim down sight and sprint to fire speed. And that's pretty much how these ones lay out. So what I will say is that you can actually take any of these long range options. So whether it's the Krig EM2, C58, Cold War, if you build it for a long range, if you take a long range option, you can actually take one of these here and swap out the gun. And then you just wouldn't do that. And you would probably start with something like Tempered, if you want to go ahead and take advantage of that plating mechanic. You can go Ghost right off the bat. You can go High Alert, so you can avoid the dead silence to be able to at least hear the audio cues. And then, you know, you can go that route as well. So there are a few different options. And basically what you do is would take one of the primary weapons that we're going to be using in one of the other loadouts and then just mesh it over here. And then you would either take the Psychov or the Amp as your secondary. Some people like the Diamati, but it's preference for Nettie, but I like the Psychov and the Amp overall for close range pistol grabbing. So now that we covered both of those, we'll jump into number 7. And this one, you could really swap out a lot of stuff. I just threw the MG because I feel like a lot of people have forgotten how good it is. It's still relatively easy to use. I think at some further ranges can be a little bit tricky, but the fast fire rate makes it a little bit more forgiving because then you just kind of line up the shot and you hit the shot. I would use the MG82 Agency, Task Force, Field Agent Grip, 125 round mag or ammunition, and then we got the 3X, and we're going to combine that with the Bullfrog, which is still pretty solid. We got the Gru Suppressor, Task Force, Tiger Team, Skeleton Stock, 65 round, and you could actually get rid of this and put on an optic like a reflex if you have trouble with the iron sights. I know sometimes I'll lose people if they drop shot, so sometimes I prefer just a reflex optic. And we're going to be having amped with this because if you're going to be running LMG, the drop time and raise time of that gun without amped is just way too slow. More often than not, that's what's going to get you killed. So that's the downside. And I think they've done that intentionally in the perk 3 slot because you could only imagine having an LMG with like FMJ and that perk be a little bit nutty. You'd be wall banging people through it'd be bad. Like it'd be so broken. So good that they didn't do that. Then we go on to number 6, which obviously QBZ has been like a little bit under the radar. I think more people are coming around to it. It's really even with the Krig here. People still prefer the Krig slightly. But we got here the loadout Agency, Task Force, Field Agent, 60 round fast because that one actually aims down sight and reloads faster. And then we got the 3X. With the Cold War MP5, we are using a blueprint, so we get the clean iron sights when we do not run a barrel. We're using Agency, Bruiser, 50-round drum, Tiger Team, and Raider stock, which is pretty straightforward there. And then, like I said, with these, you can keep EOD, double time, or cold-blooded if you're running into a lot of people that's starting to do Combat Scout. I think since it's a newer thing, we'll get to experience that as time goes on. We'll have a better idea. The EM2, I think, is a great sniper support. I think it actually is pretty much even there with the AK-47. Really comes down to preference. Their aim down sight, this thing will actually aim down sight 1 frame at 60 FPS. A little bit faster. That's 17 milliseconds faster than the AK-47 sniper support build, which we'll talk about in a quick second. So this is Agency, Field Agent, because this thing does have a lot of recoil. It has probably the most recoil out of the options, but it's a very controllable recoil as it goes straight vertical. It's just there's some pretty big gaps, so it can be hard for newer players, I think. 40 round mag, airborne elastic, microflex LED. When it comes to the actual sniper, we're going to run the Gru Suppressor, Combat, 5 milliwatt, which is like tac laser, Serpent Grip, and then the Combat stock. Straightforward. And we're going to run amped because if you don't have amp for snipers, it is atrocious. That's weapon swap speed. So you're definitely going to want that, especially since you're not going to have a fast weapon in terms of like an SMG or a pistol. And then you can go ahead and put whatever you want, Semtex, lethal. Then that brings us to the Cold War AK-47, which is pretty much built the exact same way, but obviously a little difference in recoil. You get 45 bullets per mag. The TTK is faster on the other one up close. This one's a little bit faster at far. So you got the preferences here, but they're fairly even in terms of like the head-to-head. We get the Gru Suppressor, Spetsnaz Grip, and then we have 45 round mag, and then the Gru Suppressor or Gru Elastic Wrap, and then the Microflex LED. With the Kar 98, which is the other one, obviously people go back and forth. I think the Swiss overall is a little bit better now. I just don't like the zoom on it, so I generally prefer the Kar 98. Monolithic, Singard Customs, tac laser, sniper scope, precision comb. Obviously, if you want faster ADS, you go with the sport comb, but you get a little bit less, precision, so it has more idle sway. So that's kind of how that one builds out. Then we have the C58, which I think a lot of people kind of veered away from, even though personally I think it was the meta weapon. I think it's just a little bit more unforgiving, a little bit higher of a skill gap, but I think good players can usually use the C58. And then I combine this with the OTS. So we have the C58 here. We have the Agency Task Force. We have the Field Agent Grip. And with the 55 round mag, generally you can go with the 45 and be perfectly fine. If you feel like you need that extra 10 bullets, more power to you. And then we have the 3X optic. pretty straightforward. And then the OTS actually got a buff, not in any stat base, but when you actually move your crosshairs before or move your aim, it would have this wonky effect on the back of the rear sight, which they've gone and fixed now. So it actually works like the rest of the other guns when you're actually moving your aim. So that makes it so you don't really have to have an optic anymore, because the optic kind of fixed that problem before. So it's Gru Suppressor, Task Force, Tiger Team, Skeleton, and then the fast mags, which make the reload significantly faster. And like I said, you can go ahead and swap out EOD for double time or cold-blooded. Then we have this new EM2. I think it's still a little bit in the air. I think I like it personally for Rebirth. I haven't had as much playtime with it for the ultra long distances, but I have definitely taken people out at over 150 meters. But it's a matter of how consistent can that be? Are they using a Krig to shoot back or whatever the case is? I think this one's kind of more tied with the C58 because it kills quicker for sure. But it does have a little bit more handling issues and the recoil is a little bit more. So I think that'll steer some people away. The build, pretty much the same meta build. Agency, Ranger, Field Agent, 40 round. Now instead of 45, you miss out on a couple bullets there. And then 3X. Keeping in mind that if you put on the 50, you can get away with it, but it's going to make this thing super slow. And then you could go the Task Force, but I kind of have it built so that you can still aim down sight relatively easy. Then with the OTS, pretty much the same build that we just talked about. Gru, Task Force, Tiger Team, Fast Mag, Skeleton Stock. And then we have the last but not least is still the Krig. Still the most popular, relatively easy to use. And that's really what you lean towards with these types of metas, is there's always going to be these weapons that people struggle to use just because they don't have any kind of recoil control. That's okay. In one of the easiest to control recoil games in terms of FPSs, obviously, people are still going to go towards what's easy and still kills relatively fast. And I think that's why people still lean towards the Krig with the Agency, Ranger, Field Agent grip. Some people say they like the 4-grip better. I like the Field Agent, 60 round. And then we have the 3X with the Mac 10. And keeping in mind, I still think the OTS is a little bit better, but you could swap out, interchange a lot of these SMGs to kind of fit your needs. Obviously, we just have the Tech 9, still pretty good. I think the problem with that gun is more the damage per mag isn't that high, especially when you're dealing with multiple people, kind of like the Mac 10. It's very reliable up close, but you can get into some issues if you're pushing a lot of players. Agency, Task Force, Tiger Team, 53 round, and Raider stock. Now let's go ahead and talk a little bit about Warzone Ranked. So if you're new to Warzone Ranked, there is a section where it says Loadouts, and you are able to see what's chosen most popular. The most popular weapon currently within the game is a 19% pick rate of the Krig 6. Then we also have the Kar 98 as the second most popular, Mac 10, C58, Bullfrog, Swiss, MP5, Modern Warfare version, Farah, Grau. Farah could have been on this list too. I think it's still pretty good. That could have even replaced the MG because I think the Farah is probably a little bit easier to use. I just thought I'd include an LMG. So there's a lot of great options. One thing I will point out though is when you could actually sort by KD and it can give you some options to other stuff. The Tech 9 is way up here, probably because really good players have already had a chance to use it, unlock it, level it. Versus the average player. So it's kind of inflated the KD a little bit because the EM2 is up here. But keeping in mind, they are pretty good, especially with those individual builds that we talked about, that they will have, more than likely the EM2 is going to get nerfed. I think they're going to lower the damage profile because it kills way too quick for a long range option if you hit the shots. And the C58, it's been out for a while and it has a decent pick rate. So this KD is good. So C58, in my opinion, is a top tier option. If we're looking over here for the Krig doesn't rank that high. It's more of an average gun, and that's because it's so easy to use. Even average players are able to use it, and that's why the KD is closer to 1. But yeah, something to keep in mind if you want to check it out. You can just click on any of these, and then it'll show you what the attachments are, those individual meta attachments. So if you want to go, all right, cool, Ranger over Task Force, and it pretty much has the identical build that we pretty much talked about. Because obviously we recommend it, people use it, it's a good loadout, that type of stuff. So feel free to check it out, link in the description as well. If you enjoyed the video, hit the like button. Again, 10,000 likes is the goal. See if you guys can crush that number. And if you're brand new, want to find your way back, subscribe with notifications on. Reminder, my Gfuel code is currently discounted all the way until the 16th. So if you want an extra 30% off your purchase, try something new, whatever the case is. Again, code JGOD or link in the description. Appreciate all the support. Thank you for watching. As always, have a great day.